Hi everyone, a warm welcome to this webinar on intercultural communication, why Cultural Competence CQ can make your business more agile. We have a few more dropping in. We are around 150 people joining us today, so I look forward very much to sharing my experience with you being such an international group. In order to know where you're located, it would be nice if you put in the chat box the city you're calling from. You find the chat box by clicking at the speech bubble. And you can also unmute your microphone, please. We are too many to all speak at the same time, even if we are multitasking. So we try to be punctual. We only have half an hour, and a warm welcome to all of you. 150 people from Spain, Madrid, Barcelona, Sweden, Stockholm, Gothenburg, France, Lyon, the UK, etc. Malmö as well, south of Sweden represented. So a lot of national experts, a great platform for intercultural communication. So let's start. My name is Kristina Rundkrantz, and I work as a senior consultant for BBI Communication. And BBI stands for Better Business Internationally. And we strongly believe that the Cultural Competence CQ improves your communication across cultures, and therefore it makes your business more agile, and therefore leads to better business internationally. And this is a cooperation, this webinar is a cooperation between our different offices at BBI Communication. So it's a cooperation between Finland, we have an office in Helsinki, and also between Spain, we have offices in Madrid and Barcelona, and Sweden, where our head office is located in Stockholm, and we have offices in Malmö in the south and Gothenburg. And I'm located in the city of Gothenburg. And the idea is that we offer this free webinar when we're all in this pandemic, this crisis, and we all need to promote better cooperation, collaboration, and international communication. So our aim today is to create an awareness about the fact that your cultural background has an impact on communication. And if you find this half an hour interesting, you can join our online workshop that we offer in November, a 3-hour virtual training where we go more in depth into this fascinating field of intercultural communication. So a warm welcome. You could also use the chat box, of course, if you have objections or if you agree or if you want to raise a question, but otherwise do get in touch with us at BBI Communication, and we can hopefully inspire you with this short webinar about this fascinating field. So the agenda today is that we would like to explain to you what is cultural competence, CQ. You all have IQ, EQ, now it's CQ. And secondly, the impact of culture is seen every day. I'll see it every day, and it's seen on many occasions, and how we do business, how we communicate, how we negotiate, how we build trust, how we trust each other. And thirdly, it's actually possible to measure different attitudes and communication styles, leadership styles through cultural parameters. And I will show you some examples of that. For example, between direct and indirect communication, it's very much according to the culture. Whether you're confrontational or consensual decision-making, for example, or in a discussion, whether you avoid confrontation, prefer consensual and harmony, etc. And also this could be, of course, related to personalities, but it's also culture, whether you're expressive or non-emotional in your facial expressions, your gestures, etc. Also personality, of course, but I'm focusing here on national characteristics. And I will also actually give you some examples, cultural collisions in business, where business is less agile, Unfortunately, I have a lot of failure stories. Maybe in some time we will get more success stories, but failure stories are good too in order to improve cultural communication. And even if we only have 30 minutes, I would like to give you some tips and advice how to bridge cultural gaps so that we can benefit from our diversity and make our business more agile and also enrich ourselves. I like the quote that I put on to the PowerPoint here on the right-hand side. I'm sure you can see it on the screen. It's not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent that survives. It is the one that is most adaptable to change. Now, we have a diverse world, constantly changing, so we have to change not only ourselves, but also our businesses. And I think adapting is a good word, not necessarily adopting another person's style or another culture style, but adapting to it, finding your own personal strategy. It's not, I said once that it's a question of stepping outside your comfort zone to make the other person more comfortable. But then a participant taught me that, let's say that you widen your comfort zone. You don't step out of it, you widen it, and therefore you enrich yourself. So that's my agenda today. Actually, before we go on, I need to have two clarifications here. I learned the hard way. And I need consensus on this. I don't know if you're aware what consensus is, but I'm based here in Sweden, and we very much in favor of consensus-based decision making, so that it's not the majority, it's everybody. So if you object to what I'm saying now, you have to put no in the chat box, and then we have to discuss it once again. So my statement is here. I'm going to describe different business cultures, but I'm not saying that one is good and one is bad. I'm not valuing leadership styles. You might know that better than me for your culture. So it's just a way of describing business cultures being different. So if I don't hear or see a no in the chat box, you're fine with that. Okay, so I take your silence as the fact that you agree. Silence is not always agreement, but here I perceive no reply as agreement. Okay, good. So my second clarification, where I also need consensus, is that I'm generalizing. I've already been saying that Swedish people are consensual in their decision making. And I will say a few more about generalizations. And then you might say, how could I possibly say that Spanish people are like that? And of course there are exceptions, and of course there are regional differences, especially in Spain. I'd say we have a lot of national experts here that can give a whole seminar on that. So for some countries, it's actually more relevant to talk about regional differences, and Spain is one of them. I'm sure you agree there are cultural differences between Madrid and Barcelona, and also between South and North. And of course, India. We don't have any Indian participants maybe today, or I'm sure we have somebody with experience from that country. And with 1.3 billion people, how can I possibly generalize? But from the outside, if you're not in the country, there are common features, and the country has common grounds like common generally history, politics, geography, sometimes languages, religion, etc. So I'm focusing on national characteristics here. And then, of course, you have other layers such as your personality, gender, and regional differences. But is it okay with you that I generalize? If I have no in the chat box, that means that you agree with me. So I wait a few seconds, no no's. That's good, because then I can continue. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to continue, because culture is generalizations. And then you might say, well, I'm stereotyping. Well, cultural competence is a way to avoid stereotyping. Stereotyping is an end station. Cultural competence is a starting point to predict what could be a general tendency of the majority of that country. So it helps us to avoid misunderstandings. So that's fine, we can continue. Actually, if you heard to a guru called Hofstede, he said that culture is the collective programming of the mind. It's collective as a group. Programming, you were not born with it. It's something you acquire maybe before the age of 5 or 10 at least. of the mind, and it's somewhere there, sometimes unconsciously. So that's a good definition of culture. I'd like to add 2 more definitions. Cultural competence is to understand misunderstandings. Cultural competence is to understand another opinion. You don't necessarily have to agree, but you have to understand why. So you have all the possibilities in your international teams to ask your colleague why certain things, certain values are important. Okay, so that's our agenda. If you're still not convinced that cultural competence is something necessary for agile business, I'd like to clarify, first of all, actually, how I defined cultural competence, CQ. I see 3 steps. Number 1 is self-awareness. You might have taken part in a lot of leadership trainings, and of course, being aware of your own norms and values, your own leadership style, communication style is necessary to move further. So awareness of your own culture. Secondly, learn about the other culture, whether you do a lot of business with another culture, learn about preferences and communication style leaderships about that of that country. But the third step is just as important. It's not enough to know about yourself, know about the other. You also have to have an open mind, a tolerance, acceptance, that there are other ways of seeing the world. So the adaptation part, and whether you adapt in certain areas, you go all in 100%. You do understand that in Spain, you have to build relationships in order to do business. In Finland, you might know that you have to be punctual, otherwise you will lose trust, and business is not always possible. If I generalize, and you said I could generalize. So therefore, the third step is important. You may say, well, my leadership style has been very successful in my country, and that's what I'm going to apply in India too. Well, there is no universal leadership style. It's about being agile and being able to understand. So number 3, just as important. And well, it's not a question whether we have diversity. It's no option. Everybody wants diversity, and we have diversity, even if you don't leave your country. But we need to combine it with intercultural competence, because if we don't, it's actually better to have a homogeneous team, whether it's the same age, the same nationality, the same gender. If we don't have a high cultural competence, it's better to skip diversity. It's just frustration and misunderstandings. But we do want innovation. So therefore, diversity plus high CQ makes your business agile, makes you able to work across cultures and navigate between different cultures. And it gives innovation, and that's what we want. You see how happy they are in the pictures here because they all have CQ. And the fact is that the ones I see here, now all of you 150 people joining us today, you're the ones that already are at the high level because you're here, you're curious about the topic. The ones I should see are not even here. Okay, so my next slide here will show you some comments. It's not reality, it's actually perceptions. It's just as important it's more important to understand how you're perceived. You might think that you are direct and frank, but you might be perceived as indirect or impolite, whatever. So it's not reality. I need to clarify this. But since BBI, we work a lot with people or teams going from Scandinavia or Sweden abroad, and also international talents coming into the country. So we've heard both perspectives. We know what's difficult with a certain business culture. So these are comments that I've heard. I start with the one that I hear, if not daily, very often. Now, it could say more about the sender, actually. And who's the sender? Who could possibly say that Swedes don't show commitment? Of course we are committed, but it's not perceived like that. Now, who could say this? Well, I give you the answer, the rest of the world, okay? Because when, I give an example. When the Spanish company asks the Swede, can you deliver next month, please? The Swede thinks about it a little bit, and then he or she might say, I will try. And for a Swede, that's Swinglish, okay? I will try means yes. But for a more indirect or communicative culture, it could mean I will try. That could mean maybe even a no. For an Indian person, for example, who doesn't want to say no, especially to higher up in the hierarchy, it's if I say no to you, it's like slapping your face. So then you'd say something, I will try. So in Chinese, and also Chinese English. So let's say in Chinese English, I will try means no, if I generalize. In Swedish English, I will try means yes. It's good to know, isn't it? But it's perceived as lack of commitment. And yes, you can lose business on that. How can I, if you perceive I will try as a no, how can you work with that supplier if he doesn't show commitment? Even if I say 100 times, it means yes. Still hard to believe if you come from another communication style. The next one I hear is, of course, the opposite. Americans are too optimistic. It's more like, it's not I will try, it's more yes I can. And maybe that is perceived as not realistic. And maybe from a Swedish perspective, I just want to say that, 25% of the Swedish population emigrated to America 150 years ago. And those are the optimists. Here are we, the pessimists, maybe. So that's the opposite reaction to not realistic. Another statement is that Brits don't say what they think. The difference here that Brits use, probably you agree with me, that Brits use a lot of understatements. It's sort of downgrading the statement. It sounds more vague. So Swedes and Brits use a lot of perhaps, maybe, I will try. While Americans use more upgraders. Yes, it's tremendously good. Yes, I can. So this, even if we think we speak English, it's a clash between countries that use upgraders and downgraders. And yes, business can be lost on that if you don't understand the differences in communication style. And Germans are too direct. Well, this is probably not said by a Dutch who are perceived according to or seen to be even more direct. And frank, you could say frank. So directness, it could be seen as being frank, honest, and it could also be seen as a bit rude. So too direct, that's probably said by an indirect culture. And who could say what this? Well, maybe it's a Chinese person who find the direct communication rude. And the opposite goes when the Chinese don't give frank answers. Well, frankness, is that top priority? Yes, for a German, clarity, frankness is top priority. For an indirect Asian culture, it could be harmony and diplomacy. It's more important than honesty. So not even honesty is a universal word. The next comment I've heard is Swedes are over-engineering everything. Of course, Swedes don't think that so themselves. But an American said once, yeah, you're under-promising and over-delivering. So the story goes, the American orders 2 screws. The order is 2 screws. The Swedish engineer takes the order and works on the product, and he wants to make the perfect product. So he's gold plating it, making it even more perfect, because the customer doesn't even know what's best for him. So he sends back 4 screws. And that is not what the Americans asked for. So this gives irritation. So once again, it's not a way of doing business agile if you're not aware of your own style or perceptions. So these are just comments I've heard, and let's go on to a little bit more less evidence-based comment I heard once. It could have been a Spanish person, could have been somebody from Middle East or South America. Swedes, I can't read their faces. I can't even trust them. How can I even do business with them? So if you see these blank faces, I'll give you a piece of advice. If you get frustrated and confused by blank faces in Sweden, be happy you're not in Finland. They make us nervous. So it's all relative. So if you still don't believe that this is culture and also this is important, the way your facial expressions, etc., I'll give you a quick story on this. So an American salesman, he hadn't done any cross-culture training. He went to sell a product in Finland. And, silence is not universal. For some people, it could be an agreement, for some disagreement. For Americans, it's also a waste of time. And no reply, no interest. So the American went to Finland and he said, I'll sell you this product. It costs 100,000. And the Finnish guy, blank face, no reply. And that made the American nervous. So he lowered the price to 95,000 and still blank face. So that made the American even more nervous. So he lowered the price to 90,000. And the deal was closed, 90,000. And the next day, the American asked the Finnish guy, how did you reason when we were negotiating about the price yesterday? And the Finnish guy said, what do you mean negotiating? You kept lowering the price. I was fine with 100,000. So if he had been cultural competent, he would have saved $10,000. So that's just one example, and also connected to trust, of course. Now, more evidence-based is Erwin Meyer. I want to give credit to the interculturalist Erwin Meyer, a professor working in Paris now. She's written a book, The Culture Map, and here she has 4 different corners, as you can see. The countries at the top of this map, they are more expressive and they trust people because they can read their faces. So if they go down to the countries at the lower part of this map, it's difficult to build trust. How can I trust you? I don't know what you think. The countries at the bottom of this map, they find it hard to do business with the ones at the top. So the Swede can say to the Spanish guy, why do you raise your voice? Why are you so angry? And the Spanish guy says, I'm not angry, I'm just Spanish. And then the Spanish guy goes to Sweden, and he says, I can't do business with you. I don't trust you. Now, the countries to the left, they are confrontational. Nobody wants the confrontation, but they are more fine with that. They can contradict you and still go for a beer with you the same afternoon. And they think that honesty is being frank. So they are a bit hesitant about countries to the right where you avoid confrontation. How can I do business with you? I don't trust you because you don't give me frank answers. You don't know, you don't say no when you should say no. Now, the countries to the right, they might say about the countries to the left that I can't do business with you. You're too frank. Or they wouldn't even say that. You're too rude. How can I do business with you? You're too rude. So in order to make your business agile, you need to be aware of these different corners. Now, in the virtual workshop that we offer in November, of course, we would like to give you more tools and discuss according to your needs in order to customize your training. And here, of course, you might not, even if you're from Spain, for example, you might not be typically Spanish, and we need it all. All corners are good, actually. We need the diversity, but we need to be aware about ourselves and the other culture. Now, another way of measuring culture is also to see whether the culture is task-oriented and relationship-oriented. I'll give you 2 examples. If you trust your colleague because he or she is competent, she does what she has promised to do, and that's why you trust her, then you're to the left. If you like your colleague if you trust your colleague because you like her or him, then you're to the right. If you still don't know whether you're left or right, you get a new project going at your company. Do you choose the project that has an interesting task, or would you choose the project where you like the colleagues working at that project? So that's the difference. We won't analyze this right now, but that's a definition. So I'll show you the different countries. This is generalizations, of course, and the countries to the left, more the Western world, that's where you need an icebreaker in order to go quickly to business. You don't need an icebreaker to the right. Now, I'll give you 2 examples if you still don't think that this is relevant when doing business. So the American guy goes to Brazil. Okay, we see the opposites here. And he knows he has to spend a lot of the time with the Brazilians before he can close the deal. So after about 10 trips and 15 barbecues, he pulls out the contract and he says to the Brazilian, now we really know each other, don't we? Let's sign the contract. And then again, the Brazilians might think or say, we don't need the contract, we know each other. Why do you pull out the contract? Another mistake, the failure story, is that a Swede goes to China. It takes a long time to build relationship, and they start trusting that sales manager. And then they replace that Swedish sales manager with another one, a younger one, who goes to China. And then business stops. You might not even know here why, but they build trust on the person. So you can't just replace people. But if you come from a task-oriented culture, you're not always aware of this. Now, the next one I want to show you is the Richard Lewis triangle. Some of you might have seen that. And I did my certification as a cross-cultural training in Britain with Richard Lewis. So I like this triangle, and it's not good or bad. It's a triangle. We need it all. So he means to say that some cultures are multi-active. The red circle here. Comfortable doing many things at the same time. Interruption is not so negative. You trust somebody after you've built a relationship. More facial expressions. Linear active, you can hear one thing at a time. You follow the agenda. Punctuality is a way to build trust, task-oriented. Now, reactive cultures, that means that you speak and then I react to what you've been saying. So good listeners, harmony is important, respect, etc. Now, this is the dominant communication style. If I say, for example, Japan, of course, you have punctuality and long term as well. But you can see yourself where you are, or even more where you're perceived. And it could be connected to your profession, of course. The reddest they had found was a salesman from Brazil. The bluest they had found was an engineer from northern Germany. The yellowest they had found was a diplomat from Japan. And it also depends on where, of course. When I worked in France, I was probably perceived as structural, maybe too strict. When I worked in Switzerland, I was probably perceived as maybe a bit too spontaneous. So it all depends. And without compromising on your personality, just create an awareness of this. And therefore, I would like to at least give you a little bit of ideas how to bridge the gaps. So we have a lot of experts, of course, from that red area. But hopefully you agree with me that if you work with multi-active people, like South Europe, South America, for example, it's important to build relationships, accept flexibility. Maybe it's something possible that you stay on the meeting because it's important and you don't always leave on time. Be expressive if you want to build trust. Clarify deadlines. Make sure that everybody understands the same thing, and also follow up. Now, with the linear active, the blue circle, maybe it's a good idea to stick to the agenda, be punctual, focus on task. Don't interrupt too much. If in your culture it's something polite to show engagement, well, linear active people, they might find it rude. When communicating with the yellow circle, the reactive, allow a bit more silence. Don't ask yes or no questions because you won't get the no. Focus on harmony, modesty, listen more, read between the lines. It's a high context culture. Respect the hierarchy often, and patience. No hard sell and don't cause losing face, for example. So these were some tips. I'm sure in your teams you can further discuss this and see what is relevant with the different nationalities. So my last slide here, to sum up a little bit, how CQ can make your business more agile. I'd also like the quote here, stereotypes wither when human contacts flourish. When you get to know your international colleagues and you can ask why, then you override all cultural differences. At least you can handle them. We want the differences, but we want to be able to handle them. So assume good intentions. I like that. Call it naive maybe, but we don't mean to be rude. You know, Scandinavians are sometimes like primitive Vikings. We don't mean to be rude. We forget please sometimes. Yeah, we don't always say excuse me or please. And clarify rules. Don't assume that rules are universal, especially in the virtual world. You need to clarify the aim, agenda, schedule. What do you expect? Be curious. I think curiosity is a good thing. That's why you joined today, I guess. And use your team, as I said, and ask why. And it could be personal, but often it's cultural, and it's easier to handle if it's a cultural reason. And also, at the end of the meeting, preferably before the meeting ends, summarize and follow up so that you understand what you've discussed in the same way. And maybe with written communication before and after the meeting, especially if you have non-native speakers. Encourage a speak up culture. That's easy to say. Some cultures don't want to speak up in a group, and you need to encourage it in other ways maybe, and consider what silence means. Because a speak up culture means that you allow for stupid questions and you build trust in the team. Trust, physical, mental security, sort of you feel safe in the team. That's a successful team. And the last but not least, enjoy your diversity. It's a rich world, and we all have something to contribute with. So if you find this topic fascinating, do register later on. You will get information about this 3-hour virtual workshop that we offer. So with those words, I'd like to stop here, and thank you for joining, and I wish you all the best this afternoon wherever you are in the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you.